Right.
Go on then.
And the business already. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for asking me along this evening to tell you about my stroke experience story. Thanks to the Stroke Association for asking me to do it. Before my stroke, I was a full-time working mum to Charles 19 years and Ed 30 years. Out each morning at 7:45 to travel to Leamington Spa and mum's taxi for rugby, cricket, football and after-school clubs. Charles was due to start university in September of 2010. On the 13th of July 2010, before my stroke, I'd been sat at work, working in Leamington as a telesales account manager, selling online e-learning. Funnily enough, personal safety, protecting vulnerable adults, and health and safety awareness. My left hand was hovering over the keys of my keyboard, but I was unable to press them down. I had a bit of a muddy headache, thought it was a migraine, took 2 paracetamol and thought nothing more of it. Drove home and just had our normal evening routine, chatted with Ed and Nick, and then went to bed. 2:30 AM on the 14th, all this changed. Completely out of the blue, the stroke hit. I got up to go to the loo. I suffer from ulcerative colitis, so 2 or 3 trips to the loo during the night was nothing unusual. Except this morning, I started to tear the loo paper with my right hand, but couldn't. It was starting to pile up on the floor, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to re-roll all this lot. Meanwhile, my head was starting to bang against the shower cubicle. I felt like I was swaying, and Nick came in and said, Lou, what's up, what's up? He looked at me, and in a flash, scooped me up off the loo and onto our bed. Again, all I was thinking about was, the covers, typical woman. Nick started to ring 999. I looked up, and I heard him say, I think she's had a stroke. He did fast before he made the call, and I was like, oh my God, I'm having a stroke? I can't be. I'm only 48. Old people have strokes, not me. I'm too young, not my age. A first responder came from Morton in Marsh. We live in a little village called Gloucs, right in the North Vauxhall. And he apparently called round local hospitals, Worcester, Gloucester, Cheltenham, and the John Radcliffe at Oxford, to ascertain who does thrombolysis 24/7. Thankfully, at that time, the John Radcliffe did. Then the paramedics arrived. They did all the usual checks. They blanketed me up and took me downstairs on a chair to the ambulance. I remember seeing Ed through the banister, just being very sleepy and thinking, what's happening? Where's my mum going? Nick rang our neighbour Val to see if she could look after Ed for us until whenever, and he locked up the house to follow me. I went straight to A&E at Oxford. Nick had a list of all my medication for the UC, which uncannily I'd written out the previous week, just in case anything ever happened to me. How weird was that? So I had CT scans and all the other stuff, and the consultant explained to me about thrombolysis. I remember being injected and then kicking and flailing and swearing my head off at Nick, who was telling me to calm down. And being a scouser, I was saying, calm down, you're telling me to calm down. For the next 3 days, I believe I was critical. The stroke nurse explained to Nick that because I was a younger person, you have more space between the brain and the skull, and therefore you need to allow time for the brain to swell. So I was kept close to the nurse's station, as I was a borderline craniectomy. Nick stayed each night. I slept. I remember coming round on the 4th day. My left arm was raised on the pillow. My sister made me laugh. I have a laugh, quite a loud laugh, and I really laughed out loud. And Nick said, that's mine too. I've got the back. So I spent 2 weeks in a stroke ward at the JR and was well looked after. In fact, the sister said I was a model patient. I had quite a giggle with the nurses and told one very demanding patient off. I christened her Mrs. Doubtfire. She would press the buzzer, then bang a tissue box on the metal sidebar to get the nurse's attention. I could tell her, obviously, the nurses couldn't. So I started my rehab and physio, sitting, standing, reaching for cones, doing the cognitive test, making sure I wasn't completely nuts. Well, any of my family will tell you that I was before the stroke. On my third wedding anniversary, on 30th of July, I was transferred closer to home to Cheltenham. Having fainted during my physio that day, they had to run last-minute tests before they'd let me go. So my transport was cancelled, then rebooked, and I eventually left at about 4:30. I got over to Cheltenham on the lovely Woodman coach, which unfortunately is bloody well closing. I went into the acute section to start with, in the small bay with two other ladies and a shared bathroom. It was quite late now, and Nick refused to leave my side until I saw a doctor. And so on Monday, I got to meet a whole new team who were looking after me. The physios, the OTs, the consultants, the psycho, as I call them. Sorry, psychologist, I should say. The stroke nurse and the lovely staff, all headed up by Auntie James. In total, I spent 16 weeks in Cheltenham, from July to November. And whilst I was there, I had a great time, if you can in hospital. Through laughter and tears, I was very well looked after, and the staff were excellent. But I do think a lot of that was down to me and my attitude. I'm bloody-minded and determined. I firmly believe you should treat people as you would expect to be treated yourself. The food wasn't that nice, but the desserts were. And I have since lost an appetite for mashed potato and My room was decorated with lots of cards. Everybody loved it when they came in. I saw it as my home for 4 months. The rehab rooms in that ward are superb. And towards the end of my stay, I was allowed out on day release, which was fab. Whilst I was in Cheltenham, my husband got to hear of a neuro rehab centre in Oxford, called the Oxford Centre for Enablement, OCE. He contacted them, had a look round it, and we got a referral from my consultant, who initially did try to put me off by saying, oh, they can only offer what we offer, it's mainly a long-term head injury centre. But we went for it. We wanted to explore the best opportunities available to me. I'm only 48, slightly older now. I wanted to get back to work and get my life back on track. I left Cheltenham at the end of November and was determined to walk out of the ward. I was not going out in a wheelchair. I was handed over to community care. We had a few adaptations to the house, additional stair rails at the front of the house to get up our steps. I didn't want any plastic adaptations making our house look like a disabled person's house. We had to have our ensuite changed into a wet room with no financial help because we were both working. We weren't eligible for a disabled facility for us. I'd been struggling with my left and right when I was dressing myself, and the carers who came in to helped me to sort that out. I think you are more relaxed in the comfort of your own home, and this enables the recovery process. You find your own way to adapt. I do remember having hanger rage, trying to hang clothes up, throwing hangers up the bedroom, over the landing, and wherever I could get them. But I've got that sorted now. In early December, I got the opportunity to look round OCE myself, and was very impressed. We had a good chat with my consultant, and rather than going as an outpatient, he suggested I would benefit more from being an inpatient. I just needed to discuss with Nick and Ed a further hospital stay of an initial 6 weeks. It was a no-brainer, pardon the pun. 6 weeks for a better, improved way of life for us all. So after a great Christmas at home, on 11th of Jan 2011, I went into OCE. I have to say, it is a fantastic centre, and I I know, given the network that we're in here, it's not within the network. But I did 90 minutes of physio a day and 45 minutes of OT. I did hydrotherapy. The rooms are shared. There's a self-contained flat where patients can stay overnight and get used to being independent again. And there is a communal dining room, please know better. In fact, the nurses threatened to separate our table because we were the naughty table, making all sorts of innuendo around spotted dick and custard. Every patient is given their own tailored weekly programme. Just by changing the type of stick I walk with, the OCE have vastly helped to improve my walking. From one of the sticks that you have down here, I'm now using a Nordic pole. Just by straightening up, you can tell your whole body's straightening. Where am I? Okay. In OT, I did hoovering and ironing, so I drew the line at polishing and dusting. Having bought a mirror box online after a recommendation from a physio friend, I learned to do mirror box therapy exercises at OT. I had injections of Botox, not here, but in my bicep and in my calf, and this was to help reduce the spasticity. And I still go back every 12 weeks for injections, and it does help. It gives a window of opportunity to work on my arm and hand. I was also given the chance to try the Saberflex custom-made arm orthosis. Places like the OCE are few and far between, and should not be dismissed without firstly being looked at, and secondly without bearing in mind what is best for the patient and the patient's family. It's a one-stop shop for all types of therapy for the whole family unit. I made some very good friends there, and we're still in touch with each other. My consultant said I was making such good progress that I want to stay beyond the initial 6 weeks. Yes, please, because we as a family were benefiting from me being there. I left OCE on March 11th last year, and I've never looked back. I would like to thank, if you're in the room, the commissioners who let me go ahead with that for the referral. To continue my exercise regime OCE, when I came out, we looked for a gym or personal trainer who had stroke experience. And I now see a guy called Dan Fidey for an hour a week in Cheltenham. My walking and stamina has improved more by using an alternative treadmill, and we work on strength and balance. He uses a Vibragym to get my arm working and stretching it out to the side and above my head. I still might see my community physio once a month, as well as doing my own exercises at home. So that was it. No more hospital. I found you do and can become institutionalised after spending so much time, 6 months in total, in hospital. You get home and you're on your own, as community care only lasts 6 weeks. Last July we had a lovely holiday in Cyprus in an unadapted house. I went swimming every day, it was great, and we all needed a break. So too now, I'm working as a volunteer with Connect, the Disability Communication Network, and act as a befriend to people in their homes, as well as back us on the ward in Cheltenham. It's lovely to go back and see the staff, and they like to see how I'm progressing. As a befriender, my greatest wish is to inspire, empower, and encourage my befriendees. And I tell them, you only get out what you put in. Only you will benefit from the work and the exercise you do. I was nominated as an Olympic torch bearer. Don't forget it. I'm willing to try any products that may enable my recovery. And I'm due to have a lighter leg and arm sleeve fitted soon. And I'm coming back to Bristol to try the new Amadeo finger rehabilitation device. I've been asked by the general manager for AlterG Europe, the treadmill I use, to become a brand ambassador for the treadmill, promote its use to stroke patients, and we're attending the stroke assembly this year in Birmingham. I'm a leading member of the Gloucestershire Younger Stroke Survivors Network. which was set up last year by the peer coordinator for Gloucestershire for the Stroke Association as a younger version of the Stroke Club. One of the first, if not the first in the country. We've just been chosen as one of 30 finalists for the Gloucestershire Echo Wish Cash for Your Community 2012. 50,000 under 50s have a stroke every year, and I would like to raise awareness of stroke in younger people. There is too much emphasis on older people having stroke, and I realise that is where the greatest percentages are, but more and more younger people are having stroke, and therefore I think things within the NHS need to change to accommodate looking after younger stroke survivors. I work with Kate Allen to promote stroke in younger people. I met Kate via Facebook when I was in hospital. She set up a charity called Fighting Stroke, which is aimed at raising awareness of stroke in younger people and those with locked-in syndrome. A lot of you may have seen her recently on television. That's the sky coming out, isn't it? With the Tony Nicholson case and going to court for ending his life. But she was a good outcome of lockdown. I said to Nick and Ned in January this year, 2010 was the stroke, 2011 was all about rehabilitation. 2012 is still rehabilitation, but getting on with our lives. And so in the future, well, who knows? I feel I have kissed death, and I have a sort of bucket list of things I'd like to do. As it were, a challenge, maybe a skydive if I'm allowed to, and walking the Sydney Harbour Bridge. After I had the thrombolysis, Nick asked the stroke nurse in Oxford, how much will I get back? And the nurse said at 80%. I know and accept I will never have a full 100%. However, I will strive to get as near damage. I've nearly finished now because I've probably overrun my 10 minutes. When I was in Cheltenham, Ed found a phrase for me which was on my hospital wall, and it has stayed with me. It is the Lance Armstrong quote, pain is temporary. It may last a minute or an hour or a day or a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. Thank you all very much, and thank you all. I've created a blog of my progress and also YouTube videos, so if you ever want to have a look at them, please do. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That was brilliant. We're now going to, sorry, I picked up brilliantly on some of the points you made there. I think that certainly what I've seen is the stroke patients who do the best after their stroke are those who have great families, who have great strong personalities and who really fight to get what they need. We've been involved with the network in a piloting scheme to help more new patients kind of get that support to do just that. So Anita's going to tell us a little bit now.